also have a role to play in improving the climate for investment in our country. So all of us do have an important role, and it will be helpful if all of us speak up South Africa as a destination for investment, even as we may differ on a number of issues with regard to either policy or whatever. In the end, we should all be working for the common good, which is to bring more investments in our country, as well as to ensure that we reposition our country as an attractive destination for investment. So all of us can work together to push the investment envelope and make sure that people do come and invest in our country. Thank you very much.
The next supplementary question is to be asked by the Honourable Shivambu.
No, thank you very much, House Chairperson. We take note, President, that you have admitted to your first failure on the commitments that you made during the State of Nation address. And we cautioned you when you said that they're going to have this conference after conference, and then we said to you that that is not a plan. You are not clear in terms of what you seek to achieve. Now we have failed to convene an investment conference. But we also advise you then that create a state-owned vehicle which is going to attract investment. You have appointed envoys now outside of that vehicle for investment. I don't understand the philosophical underpinnings of your policy in terms of how are you going to deal sustainably with investments that are not going to be housed or be guided by the state-owned investment vehicle, because when they come without such a partnership, they're going to come with conditionalities, dictate to you what policies you must adopt, dictate to you what you should say. But practically what we have done is the EFF now. We've gazetted.
Honourable Member, will you ask a question? Your time is expiring.
We have gazetted the process to amend the Banks Act so that it can be permissible to create a state-owned bank. Do you support the creation of a state-owned bank as recognized by the Banks Act? Thank you very much.
The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair and Honourable Shivambu. Thank you very much. Let me immediately say that the investment envoys are not going to work outside the parameters of what we've got in the government or the state. In fact, they are going to work hand in glove with our various government. Going to be campaigning for investments to come through, to in glove with our various government. Going to be appoint people who have various networks, who have various capabilities, so that they come to assist us. And this is how we bolster the efforts that we all can make, making sure that we make our country attractive to investors. So the two are not mutually exclusive. If you thought that we are going to work in different ways and pull in different directions. Yes, the state-owned bank is a resolution that was taken by the governing party. So if you ever wanted the originator of this concept, I think you can do well to work with the governing party, because it is precisely the governing party that has, over time, insisted that there should be a state-owned bank. And indeed, it may well result in the amendment to the Banks Act, and those are the mechanics that need to be looked at and to be pursued. So, yes, I support a state-owned bank, if that's what you wanted to know. I support a state-owned bank because it is through this bank that we will be able to broaden the investment or the money pool in our country. And in fact, Honorable Shivambu, what we should really be looking at is to create more banks in our economy. There needs to be more and more banks that should make money available to the citizens of our country. I have often said that, with so much money that one finds in our economy through our stokvels, if you're going to listen, Honorable Shivambu, in our stokvels, in our rural areas, there is a need for something that will amount to a Stokvel Bank. There is a need in our economy for an agri-bank that will be focused on financing your small, emerging, medium farmers. There is a need. There is also a need. You know, there's so much money, and I'm sure you and I belong to a funeral benefit club or something. I do. This was started by my grandfathers many years ago, and I contribute money every month to a funeral facility, and many of us as black people do that. There is also a need for a bank that will be focused on things like that. We need township banks. There's no reason why in the townships we do not have banks. So we need to move away from the monopoly of just 4 banks in our country and create more banks. More banks so that there should be more access to funding. If you go to a number of countries, Honorable Shivambu, which I'm sure you have, you will find that in a number of countries there are a plethora of banks. The reason for that is to make finance accessible to a number of stakeholders. I know, for instance, there is a women's bank which has been giving funding in small measures, particularly to women in Mpumalanga. And they have been doing so for a number of years, and they've performed extremely well. Now, I would have wanted to see this bank spreading its wings and offering small and medium loans to women throughout the length and the breadth of our country. So banking is a sector that one needs to be properly transformed. It is well regulated in our country, and we should be grateful for that. We need more banks to make funding more and more available to our people. So thank you very much for your question. You are on the right track with regard to your support for a state-owned bank. Thank you very much.
The next supplementary question is to be asked by the Honourable Esterhuizen.
Thank you, House Chair. Honourable President, even with the very competent team that you appointed to attract $100 billion in investment, the fact remains that a lack of policy coherence and program alignment will be a major constraint, and it's likely to have a devastating effect on foreign investment. And I'm sure that everyone, before investing $100, never mind $100 billion, would like to know exactly what your government's intentions are for land expropriation without compensation. Please define, Honourable President, whose land is going to be expropriated? Is it state land, private land that mostly belongs to banks, farms, or only certain land that belongs to certain people? And as with the previous question, Honourable President, you are well aware that whatever you say as the President of the country affects the economy directly, and it will be news tomorrow.
Honourable Member, your time has now expired. The Honourable President.
House Chair, thank you very much. Honourable Esterhuizen speaks about policy coherence. And earlier, as I outlined the answer to this question, I did say that the investment envoys are going to be trawling the length and the breadth of the world and telling the investment world that South Africa, 1, is open for business, and 2, policy coherence and policy stability, or rather stability, is becoming more and more entrenched in our country. And that is the type of message that we have found investors receiving extremely well and very positively, because they see that it is unfolding, they see that it is happening with regard to the progress that we are making. The issue that you have just raised about land is the subject of another question which I will be addressing in a minute or two. So if I can ask you to be patient, because I want to address this question as it has been asked by another member in relation to specifically matters related to your question. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The last follow-up question on this round is to be asked by the Honorable P.J. Groenewald.
Dankie, voorsitter. Ek wil vir die agbare president vra dat die bekende ekonoom Mike Schuessler het verwys na die netto direkte buitelandse investering in Suid-Afrika wat die verskil aandui tussen Suid-Afrikaanse sakelui en besigheidsmense wat in die buiteland belê teenoor buitelandse investerings in Suid-Afrika. In 2005 was die syfer 24% positief. Tans is dit minus 31% van die bruto binnelandse produk. Dit beteken sakemense en beleggers van Suid-Afrika verkies om eerder te belê in die buiteland as wat buitelanders verkies om te belê in Suid-Afrika. Mike Schuessler het gesê.
What is the question, Honourable Member?
Goed, die opvolgvraag is, wat sê die agbare president vir die buitelandse beleggers om dit aanloklik te maak om in Suid-Afrika te kom belê, gesien ook in die lig van die blote aanvaarding wel van die beginsel van onteiening sonder vergoeding, want dit skrik beleggers af.
The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Honourable Groenewald also asks precisely the same question that has been asked, which is a subject of another two questions which I'm going to respond to. Now, with regards to the differentiation which he speaks about between investors, South African investors, and those who invest from outside the country, yes, there has been a difference. And a number of companies, South African companies that have invested outside, have done so because they've seen opportunities. And in fact, we should not be concerned about some of the companies that want to invest in other countries because they're taking the South African brand out there. But we still want them to invest here in South Africa, as they have either subsidiaries or other divisions outside the country. We want them to retain a base and a home here. And one of the objectives that we have with our investment envoys is to engage with South African investors and convince them to continue investing in our market. And a number of them are sitting on huge reserves, which we would like to see employed in our economy. And therefore, we say the opportunities that are here should be seen as being even greater than the opportunities that they could see outside the country. And many of them are heeding that call and are willing to reconsider whatever positions they may have wanted to take outside. And our job, Honourable Groenewald, is to attract more and more outside investors to come here. And in this regard, we have really, truly received very encouraging and positive indications as we have been engaging with a number of players, a number of potential investors outside of South Africa. They are noticing what we are going through, the improvements that are beginning to germinate within our economy. They can see that. And I can tell you, and investors themselves can smell a deal. They smell a deal even better than you and I can, because they want to come here and make money. So our job should be to attract them to come here. And if there are concerns, let us discuss those concerns amongst us. So I think we are on the way to attracting more and more investors to come to our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable President. Honourable members, before we proceed, I want to draw your attention to Rule 142, Section 6. A supplementary question must arise directly from the original question, and the reply given thereto and may not constitute a new question. And also, Section 7, A supplementary question may not consist of more than one question. Can we keep that in mind as we proceed this afternoon, please? The next question, question number 8, has been asked by the Honorable Carter. The Honorable President.
Honorable House Chair and honorable members, during the State of the Nation address in February, I said that a priority of government would be to restore the integrity of public institutions that are charged with the very critical mandates in our constitutional democracy. In line with that commitment, we are working to stabilize key institutions in the security cluster, strengthen law enforcement institutions, and shield them from any external interference, manipulation. We are deeply concerned about allegations of corruption and other acts of wrongdoing. Up a review panel to assess the structure of the agency relative to its mandate and inquire into its systems and capacity. I have also instructed the Minister of State Security to take the necessary steps to attend to all governance and operational challenges confronting the agency and to work to restore the public's confidence in this critical institution. The Minister of Police is similarly undertaking measures to address the challenges in the Crime Intelligence Division of the South African Police. These include the appointment in March of a new Divisional Commissioner for Crime Intelligence, Lieutenant General Anthony Jacobs. At the same time, it is necessary for critical oversight bodies like the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence and the Office of the Inspector General on Intelligence to be empowered to undertake their respective mandates much more effectively. I am confident that through the work that government is undertaking to address the challenges within the intelligence services, together with the work being undertaken by side bodies, we will succeed in restoring the integrity and operational capability of services that are meant to play such a vital role in keeping our country and its people safe. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable President. I've been informed that the Honorable Lokota will take charge of the first supplementary question on behalf of the Honorable Carter. The Honorable Lokota.
Thank you, Chair. Deputy President, the Honorable President, in a recent interview, the Minister of Police reminded us that the entire intelligence and security agencies of our country have been busy committing what one must call treason. Because he said, and he also you were the Deputy President at that time. Both yourself and the President were in control of affairs. What guarantee can you give us as we sit in this House that the intelligence agencies have already stopped doing the wrong things that they were doing and that we can be assured that the nation is secure? I thank you.
The Honorable President.
How Honorable Lekota, so demoted, you know, Mutsegare fellas. Honorable Lekota, I'm pleased to inform you that, a number of those issues that you have alluded to, which the Minister of Police articulated in the said interview are going to be addressed through this review panel that I will be setting up shortly. And that review panel will be composed of people who are well adept of not only intelligence matters, but also security matters. They will be able to go to the depth of some of the shortcomings, some of the challenges and problems that these agency faces. And indeed, it will also include criminal intelligence in one way or another. So this structure will go into the mandate that the intelligence service has as per our constitution, and it will go into its capability. But doing so will also go back into how it has executed that mandate and how best that mandate can be executed going further, and also in terms of implementing and adhering to our constitution. So the guarantee I can give you is that as we do a process of all these institutions, we are going to keep an eye on what is set out in our constitution and what is in the interests of the people of South Africa with regard to securing them. So that is something that you can be rest assured about. And we will do precisely just that and make sure that they act in accordance with the Constitution and pay allegiance to no other interest but the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. Thank you very much.
The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honorable Maimane.
Thank you, House Chair. Mr. President, I think all of us would agree we build our reputation on the basis of what we've done, not what we're going to do. And therefore, in this particular instance, I want to understand, Mr. President, one of the gross abuses of state resources was done by former Inspector General, Mr. Arthur Fraser. He was found, in fact, to have been running a covert his private home. He preferred against him. Now, what I want to understand, Mr. President, is that you've instituted a commission of inquiry into the SARS commissioner. Why is Mr. Fraser being given special treatment? He should be in a correctional service, not running one. So what I want to understand is, why is he being given this special treatment, and will you assure this House that he will be held accountable in this regard?
The Honorable President.
Thank you, House Chair and Honorable Maimane. The last time I checked, I found that you were the leader of the Democratic Alliance. You still are. Now, the Democratic Alliance, led by the inquirer, or the person who has just raised the question, has sought to challenge and to question the decision that the President took in relation to Mr. Arthur Fraser. And they have done that not through any type of avenue. They've decided to go to court. So the matter is now before the courts. The matter is before our courts, and much as I would have wanted to engage Mr. Maimane, I have found that I now have to respond to the papers that they have launched in court, which we are going to do, because truly Mr. Maimane and the DA do warrant a response or a reply as to the decision that was taken to have Mr. Arthur Fraser transferred to a separate department away from the department that he was running. So we will be able to provide that answer through those court papers. And as they say, the matter is now sub judice, and I'd like to leave it there so that we can address the matter
House
properly.
Chairperson.
Yes, Honourable Member.
House Chairperson, I'd like to address you in terms of Rule 89 of the National Assembly rules. As I've said on many occasions before, the MIDI television case in the Constitutional Court of the Republic has rendered the sub judice excuse as invalid in a constitutional environment. And our rules are clear that while you may not talk about the merits of the case, that you are still accountable to answer the question that was posed. It's about why. It's not about the legal action. It's why, sir, why the Honourable the President, matter that's before the case, before the courts, it's not reflecting on the merits of the case, and the President knows that the sub judice rule does not apply in this case, and he must answer the question.
Order, Honourable Members. Honourable President, would you wish to further reply?
No, there is not much greater of a reply other than to say, and if they are trying to do an equation between two different cases, one would say that in the case of the intelligence service, we've had to take a number of considerations into account due to the sensitivity and the sensitive nature of our intelligence service. And in paying regard to that, it was thought, I thought, and I decided that it is best to move Mr. Fraser out so that the review panel that I have spoken about can get into the depths. Indeed, if there is further action that needs to be taken, it will be taken. It's just as simple as all that. And I would like members to be aware of the sensitive nature of our intelligence service, and our Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence would also testify to this, and it has been one of the reasons why we have acted in the way that we have. And I'd like members to have an understanding for the sensitive nature of the work that is done by that agency. And the review panel, which I've spoken about, yes, and indeed, the review panel will also go into the PAN project. That review panel will go into the depths of everything that has to do with our intelligence, which is a highly sensitive matter, and thereafter we will be able to take further decisions. So thank you, Mr. Maimani, for raising it, and unfortunately you have had to take us to court. I would have preferred that due to the sensitive nature of intelligence, which really affects the security of the people of South Africa, we could have dealt with it differently and separately. So we will proceed on that way, and you and I can have a further discussion because of the sensitive nature of this matter. Thank you very much, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable President. The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honourable Dlamini.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mr. President, except being a man that is just walking, can we get your views on the issues relating to ethics, transparency, and accountability? The Department of Water and Sanitation is on the verge of collapsing. Billions of rands have been wasted under the leadership of Minister Nomvula Mokonyane. Minister involved in bribery in the fishing department. So, President, do you think it is sensible to keep these people in your executive? Should South Africans continue to trust you when you continue to work with these people? Thank you.
Just before the President reply, I've drawn the attention of members to the relevant rules when it comes to supplementary questions. Honourable
I
President.
have noted a number of issues that have been raised by Honorable Dlamini, and he wants to know the extent to which our transparency and accountability stretches. And I can assure you that, yes, we are going to hold members of the executive accountable in a fairly transparent manner to all the things that they get involved in, including myself. That we will be able to do. Now, where there is wrongdoing, including myself, we will act. Extent to which we have committed ourselves to clean government, to accountability, as well as to transparency. Now, this adds up to the various actions that we have been taking to help or to embark on the journey of rooting out corruption in government, and anyone who has been found to have participated in wrongdoing will be dealt with. Thank you very much.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Swart.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, President. President, the ACDP shares concerns and is extremely concerned about the allegations of malfeasance, corruption, and gross abuse of state resources at both crime intelligence and the State Security Agency. And whilst we welcome the review panel that you're instituting, clearly there's nothing to prevent investigation and prosecution on the basis of those allegations at this stage. Would you agree those investigations should continue and State Security Agency from doing their job now of eradicating the rotten apples from these institutions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You may proceed, Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. I'm able to confirm that the review panel that is going to be set up in the next few days is going to get involved, as I have already said, in reviewing the mandate, particularly of our intelligence service. But that does not prevent any investigations that's already underway from proceeding. If there are any investigations that have commenced, we would say they should go ahead, because if there has been wrongdoing, we would say that that wrongdoing needs to be addressed, and those who are found to have participated in wrongdoing should indeed be dealt with. So there is no prevention whatsoever to investigations that have already commenced from proceeding. The review panel will be reviewing, as I said, the mandate, the effectiveness, the systems, and the structures of our intelligence agency. And once it has come out with a report, we will then be able to see the extent to which that state agency needs to be recalibrated, to be reformed, and if it requires restructuring, how we are able to do that so that we reposition it to serve the interest of the people of South Africa in the most effective way in terms of our constitution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable President. We now proceed to question number 9, asked by the Honourable Malgas to the President of the Republic. Honourable President.
House Chair and honourable members, the colonial conquests of our country, which began well over 300 years ago, was achieved through violence and indeed brutality as well. The system of apartheid was built and sustained through the violent suppression of the political, social, economic, as well as other rights of the majority of black people in our country. This violence took the form not only of state repression, but also the dispossession of our people's land, the destruction of their livelihoods, and the exploitation of their labor. Through the migrant labor system, the imposition of influx control, and the creation of the Bantustan system, families were torn apart and resorted to detention in our communities. While these methods of repression were laid bare in the proceedings of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and through the TRC contributed, and though the TRC contributed to the process of national reconciliation, many of the wounds of decades of apartheid and colonialism still remain to this day. In many ways, we remain a violent society where murder, assault, rape, and contact crimes are still widespread. The alarming levels of violence against women and abuse of children are a damning indictment on our society. We are particularly concerned at the apparent increase in the instances of femicide where women have been killed by their partners. There is a responsibility on all of us, particularly men, to ensure that these crimes of killing of women do not occur. Too often, people resort to violence to settle differences or to express discontent. There are other wounds that still have not healed. The violence of poverty, homelessness, hunger also continues to afflict millions of our people. Despite the social and economic progress that we have made, severe inequality continues to divide our society by race, to acknowledge that yes, they exist, and yes, what is being complained about did happen. As the governing party said in its January 8th statement this year, we shall redouble our efforts to build a society in which black poverty and white privilege are consigned to the past. In this context, I wish to commend the Honorable Maimane for having made, and in the course of doing so, of course, he also invoked imagery that depicted him as the junior Mandela. We will be the first to defend Mmusi Maimane against those in his own party who want to deny the reality of racial inequality in South Africa. We will rise in unison, Mr. Maimane, to defend you because your message was on point. You were absolutely correct. We were alarmed. We were alarmed to see headlines in a local newspaper which said we need, secondly, to agree as a nation on the measures we must take to deal with them. Reducing inequality and ending poverty must be at the center of our efforts. This requires a growing inclusive economy the creation of jobs for all our people, the provision of quality education and the development of skills. It requires government support. It is only by ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to acquire useful skills, to find decent employment, to earn a living wage, to have a house, and to feel safe, that we will be able to effectively, yes, heal the wounds of the past. At the same time, we need to build families, communities, and workplaces that are cohesive, stable, and peaceful. That places a responsibility on all of us to act at all times with dignity, with honesty, respect, and goodwill, and to ensure that we are able to bring up our children to value and to live by these principles. We are on our way to build the kind of society which Mamuwini Matigizela Mandela and many of our great leaders dedicated their lives, but we still have some distance to travel. We still have many wounds to heal. And Mr. Maimani, I'd like you to join all of us to continue healing these wounds that were inflicted by our past experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable
House
President.
Chairperson.
Yes, Honourable Member, why are you
I'd like
rising?
to address you in terms of Rule 85.
Yes, Honourable
As it
Member.
relates to casting and accusing members of improper motives. I think if anybody in this House should appreciate the fact that you shouldn't read what you believe what
No,
you read on the Sunday
Member,
papers,
that
it should be the Honourable
Member,
Ramaphosa.
Honourable Member, that is not a point of order. It doesn't apply in this instance. It's a matter for debate and discussion. The Honourable Malgas, do you have a follow-up question? Order, Honourable Members.
Of our past. And
Honourable Malgas, will you just start again? We couldn't hear the first part.
President, in acknowledging the wounds of our past and agreeing that there are measures that need to be taken to deal with the damage of the past whose legacy remains with us. We have committed ourselves to nation building, guided by Mandela's vision of nature, of the nature and character of the future society we want to build. With this understanding, what is your assessment of our progress in bringing together our different strata, communities and key stakeholders in the construction of the future we collectively desire to have? I thank you.
The Honourable President.
Honourable House Chair and Honourable Malgas, thank you very much. We are still trapped by our past. Much as we seek to move away from the impact that apartheid has wrought on us, that past still traps us. It still holds us back. The shadow of our past still casts its vision on our future. And indeed, we need to take many, many steps indeed to move forward out of the shadow of apartheid. And all of us are therefore called upon to do everything that we can to move away from this sad past and to heal the wounds. And there are many active things that we can do to heal that past. And as I said earlier, the first clearly is to admit that that past is not a fable, that past is a reality. It is only when we accept the reality of what we have gone through that we are then able to deal with the wounds of the present and heal the wounds so that the future may be a lot better for all of us. So actively, we need to deal with poverty, because poverty clearly is that gaping wound of our past. We need to deal with inequality, and inequality continues to be the festering wound of the past, that was handed down to us by an ugly system of apartheid. And indeed, these days we also have to deal with unemployment. And unemployment becomes our constant ugly visitor because many of our people remain unemployed, and that is another wound that we need to dress up. That is another wound that we need to heal, and that is another wound that must be attended to. And indeed, the violence that continues to rage in our society, and violence that is born out of desperation that many of our people are having to face on a daily basis. When people are poor, they resort to desperate means, desperate ways of resolving their problems, and that is what we need to address, so that people who are desperate right now become less desperate as their livelihoods improve, as they get jobs, as their children get better educated. That is the task that we have as a nation, as leaders, and as a people. It is this that we have to do as a major project as the people of South Africa to move our people out of this desperate situation of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. It is only when we have done so that we will be able to say we have healed the wounds of the past. So all of us are invited to be doctors and nurses and provide medicine to heal these wounds that were inflicted by the horrible system that we had in the past. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable President. The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honourable Van der Merwe.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. Honourable President, I agree with you that if we talk about the wounds of our past and we talk economic challenges, we must talk about the crisis that is gender-based violence. And I've often asked you about this because I simply believe that government's not doing enough to fight gender-based violence, and to that end, women are not safe in their homes, women are not safe on those streets, women and children are just not safe. So my question to you is, will your new administration prioritize the fight against gender-based violence? To drop the case, is still suitable to be an MP for the ruling party? If so, why?
The Honourable President.
Thank you very much. Yes, we would like our government to continue prioritizing the campaign against the abuse of women and children, and to do so through the various interventions and measures that we continue to place, so that women and children who are abused are able to find refuge in their communities, refuge in government institutions. Our justice and prosecutorial system does be more responsive to the challenge that is faced by the many women in our country and children who continue to be abused. I have had occasion, as I've been traveling around, to interface with the officers, police officers, who have as their task to address this issue on a specific basis. They often tell me that it is a challenging job, it is most distorting, and it is most depressing, as they have to deal with really terrible situations of abuse of women and children. But each time I've spoken to them, they have said, but we will not give up. We will not give up, and they say, all we now need from you as government is to give us more resources so that we can carry on with this struggle. And it is precisely this that we are going to be committed to giving them, and I'd like to see more attention being given to this in my discussions with the Minister of Police. This is an area of focus that we want to shine a light on. And of course, admittedly, these things often happen in the privacy of the homes in our society about the issue of abuse of women and children. We want to raise this more prominently, but at the same time strengthen the government systems that are going to be there to support women and children. We must also pay tribute to the many organizations in our country that have as their mandate and their agenda as non-governmental organizations they have focus in this area, and we applaud them because many of them do thankless tasks, but they plod on, they continue doing this piece of work. The issues of Member of Parliament Duduzi Banana have not been made known to me in the exact detail that you are describing, and clearly even he, Duduzi Manana, has to go through his own parties, go through all this. And yes, I would have seen it in the public arena, but he does need to go through the various processes in his own party. And I think it is best to leave it there because that is when the real evidence does come through. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable President. The next follow-up question is to be asked Honourable Chaisa.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. Honourable President, one of the wounds of the past is the issue of land.
Yes.
Can you please elaborate on the smart system that is going to be used to deal with this issue so that there's no violence at all? Thank you.
The Honourable President.
I am going to be addressing the issue of land in a while, but all face, violence should be removed from the equation at all times, because violence is not the way to resolve problems. Problems are easily resolved through dialogue, through consensus building, through people sitting around a table, exchanging views, and arriving at a mutually beneficial and a mutually acceptable outcome. So violence, land grabs, where people resort to self-help measures is not the way to go. And in fact, we will not allow anarchy and disorder in South Africa when it comes to resolving issues of land. The question of land is being addressed right now through various structures of government and indeed through this parliament, and we are going to arrive at a solution that will be all-encompassing, that will be all acceptable to all of us as we increase the dialogue that we are already engaged in. So violence is not the way to resolve the land question at all. Thank you very much.
To the same issue, I think it fits that we just convey our condolences to the family that had 8 people dying through the fire when their shack was torched. And of course, she said that almost all those who died, excluding the children, were unemployed. So it's very painful, and it is alleged that it's an act of arson killing. And I know that the police is still going to work on that one. Now, Honorable President, what is your agenda with regard to youth unemployment and also the issue of housing? Because it has to do with some social structural inequalities that are still affecting our country, and it's part of the gaping wounds that we still face in this country. Thank you.
Honorable President.
Honorable House Chair and Honorable Kobisa, we have made the challenge and the problem of youth unemployment one of the key areas of focus in our various government programs. And this is being focused on by various departments in government. And indeed, as we started off the year, we launched a program that is going to have an impact on up to 1 million young people over a 3-year period. And we want to embark on many others at provincial level, at local level, so that we draw many more of our young people into employment, into entrepreneurship, into proper training where they will gain skills. Now, our young people are ready. They're waiting for those opportunities. They want to have access to those opportunities that we can put on the table for them. And this is precisely what we are seeking to do. What we launched some 2 months ago is but one of the many initiatives that we have in mind to get young people into the world of work, into training, and into entrepreneurship. We're going to be rolling out more and more our program with regard to getting young people into entrepreneurship, and we've got fantastic partners, both local and global, who have already come to the fore to say, having seen what government is doing and focusing on in relation to the Youth Employment Service, they also want to participate, they want to lend a hand, they want to be part of this process of empowering young people. So young people are the key focus, both in the rural areas and in the urban areas of our government programs. And we will continue to do so. We're looking for every opportunity through which we can send young people into the various things that will keep them engaged. I was, as you know, in London recently, and I met a few university professors, and they said, Mr. President, send your young people to us. Send your young people. We will give them scholarships. We will bring them into our universities. And I told this to a number of young people I met in the Northwest. They were overjoyed because they saw a pathway being opened for them. And that, Honorable Kobisa, is one of the things that we want to do on an ongoing basis, to send as many young people as possible, both to learning institutions here and abroad, so that they come back with good skills that they can patriotically deploy in our country. So our focus is young people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable President. That concludes question number 9. We now get to question 10, asked by the Leader of the Opposition. The Honorable President.
Honorable House Chair, honorable members, for South Africa to grow faster and to build a transformed and inclusive economy, clearly land reform is necessary. But it is not only necessary, it has become very urgent. We will advance the 3 elements of land reform: redistribution, restitution, and security of tenure through inclusive dialogue. We will explain to potential investors, as Mr. Maimane has asked, that land reform is not incompatible with agricultural productivity and economic development, as the historical experience of some Southeast Asian countries or economies, such as South Korea, have demonstrated. Land reform, which will include the mechanism of expropriation without compensation, will be implemented in a way that contributes to a stronger economy, job creation, and economic freedom. We will do so without jeopardizing economic development, agricultural production, and food security. In our investment law, we will provide, and as we say, we provide significant guarantees to domestic and foreign investors. In our engagements at the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, during investor roadshows in the US and in the UK, and at recent roundtable discussions with CEOs in London, and indeed in our exchanges with a number of other leaders on the African continent in Kigali, we found that foreign investors do appreciate the need for South Africans to find sustainable solutions to the inequitable distribution of land and wealth in our country. In their investment decisions, investors take a long-term view on the market opportunities, sector policy, and support and regulatory environment. They are looking for stability, they are looking for certainty, they are looking for policy certainty as well. They are also looking for clear and direct messages that they themselves will be able to analyze. Our envoys will indicate that steady progress is being made in consultation with industry, with labor, and communities on the finalization of the mining charter. We will soon be finalizing our approach on the allocation of spectrum, which will build the requisite capacity for a modern, inclusive economy. Government is leveling the playing field for investors and businesses entering concentrated markets through amendments to the competition legislation. It is significant that Moody's Ratings Agency recently decided to keep South Africa at an investment grade and changed its outlook from negative to stable, affirming the country's recent political and economic developments. Foreign investors that we have interacted with over the last few months are increasingly optimistic about the prospects for the South African economy and looking with great interest at possible investment opportunities. Rather than look at the issue of land reform, the correction of this terrible deed that was done many years ago where land was taken away from our people in negative light, I say let's look at it in positive light. Let's look at it as a great opportunity that all of us have as South Africans to contribute to this debate. So far, I'm told that 140,000 submissions have already been made by the people of South Africa in the initiative that was commenced by this Parliament, by this National Assembly. They are sending submissions on an ongoing basis. And they all have views. They all have suggestions to put forward. They all have certain positions that they want these honorable members who are here to heed. And I'm saying, let us allow that dialogue to continue. Soon, the structure that we've put in place will be going around the country to hold consultations and to listen to our people. Our people have views. They have ideas. Let's give them that opportunity. Rather than to sit here and pontificate, rather than to sit here and think that we are wiser than our people as a whole. 140,000 people have already submitted, and I think it is likely to top even 500,000 soon. There have been two other processes that our people have engaged in. The first was when the Freedom Charter was drafted. Thousands and thousands of our people participated. They wrote their submissions, and some were written on brown paper, some were written on newspaper pages, some were even written on toilet paper and sent through to the Congress of the People to deliberate on the aspirations of our people. That resulted in the endorsement and the drafting of the most important document that we have ever had in our country, apart from our Constitution, a document that whose pronouncements have found their way in our Constitution, the Freedom Charter. The next opportunity was when our people participated in the drafting of our Constitution. More than 1 million people made submissions. And the National Assembly, or the Constitutional Assembly, that met in this very house, considered the various views that our people had to give, and we did not pontificate. We listened to our people, and finally, we came to a conclusion which resulted in the Constitution that governs how we function here. Now, let us give our people an opportunity to voice their feelings, their aspirations about land. Land remains a deep wound that was inflicted on our people. Let our people go through their healing process and deal with the issue of land as effectively as they want to. So let us engage in dialogue. Mr. Maimane, allow our people to express their views, and once that process is done, we will then, with the hindsight of wisdom that will have come from our people, we will then be able to take a decision. Right now, we have a constitutional construct that has set in motion various processes and indeed various principles. Our people are saying, we want this wound to heal. Let us address this wound and let us listen to our people because they are talking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable President. The first supplementary question is to be asked by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Point of order. I noticed that the Deputy President looks very tired. He's been in and out of sleep for a while, so I thought maybe the President could take him for a walk outside.
No, Honourable Member.
10 minutes.
No, Honourable Member, that's not the point of order. We can't allow the President to leave the podium now. He's busy answering questions. Honourable Maimane.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Honourable President, I think I must affirm this point talking about wounds of our past. That in the Constitution of the DA is adopted a value of fairness. It is an explicit acknowledgement that our country remains unequal on the basis of race. And I think every member who sits here, black or stands committed to addressing that injustice. And I feel it's critical that when we enter this discussion, it cannot be on the basis of putting one race versus another. It ought to be on the basis of all races working together to address that injustice. Having said that, I welcome your input on the input South Africans have made. I want to speak specifically about the one you made in the UK, where you spoke to a newspaper and affirmed the fact that the land reform processes of any future will be implemented, will happen within the parameters of the Constitution. But my challenge is this, Mr. President, is that there are statements that are made by members of your NEC. And I want to quote Mr. Ronald Lamula, who says, in fact, without doubt, this is in a nationally televised debate, he says, the commitment to expropriate without compensation doesn't only refer to farms, but that the ANC is explicitly targeting urban residential properties for seizure, he says. Now, what I'm trying to understand, Mr. President, is that overseas we defend the Constitution, but in South Africa it seems it's open for negotiation. Can you explain to us what is the policy of your party so that we get certainty as to whether we will defend the Constitution Or is Mr. Lamola right in that it's property seizures? Which is it exactly, Mr. President? Thank you very much.
The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair and Honorable Maimani. Thank you very much. The process that we have started here, which really was given rise to by the resolution of the governing party in December, when it resolved that we need to address this whole issue of land reform through the mechanism of expropriating land without compensation. It's clearly a process which, having been embraced by this House, is going to lead to an outcome. An outcome, Mr. Maimani, which I am sure you are going to be part of, as you are part of this House. We are now currently involved in this very process. Now, clearly, the policy of the governing party is very clear. We need to move on with land reform and restore the dignity of our people. But for me, more importantly, to look at land with new eyes, as it were. To look at land as an economic resource that was taken away by force from the majority of our people, to restore that economic resource into the hands of our people so that they can have a livelihood, they can have an economic capability which is going to improve their lives. And the Freedom Charter is very clear on this. And it says, as early as 1955, our forebears complained about this and said, or raised an aspiration, or articulated an aspiration, and said that the land shall be shared amongst those who work it. And therefore, we want that land to be shared amongst our people. Our people must be able to share the land. And I'd like those who say that the land must not be shared to stand up and say, we are not prepared to share the land. I want those to stand up and say so, because that is the most important. And if you like, that is the most reasonable demand from our people. And they are not saying, we want the land to the exclusion of everyone else. They are saying, we want the land, as it was said by our forebears in 1955, to be shared amongst who work it. Now, if we come to urban land, indeed, there is land there that has been kept away from our people, and they are in need of housing. And they don't want to eat the land. They don't want to abuse the land. They want to utilize the land to have houses. And those who say that our people must not have houses must stand up and say, we do not want you to have houses. Because that is the most important demand that poor people are making. And our job, our task is to respond to the needs of our people. We have to respond, and we've got, Mr. Maimane, to find ways and means. The mayor of Johannesburg has been taking buildings that are derelict, buildings that owe quite a bit of money. He's been taking them, and he's been taking them without any form of compensation and transforming them into living abodes for our people. And if that is not true, that is something that needs to be looked at. That our people need housing, and we need to respond to housing and share living abodes. Those who do not have houses must also have houses. Those who do not have land must also have land, and therefore land must be shared amongst our people. And that is a demand, Mr. Steenhuisen, that is a demand that will never go away. For people who think that the issue of land in South Africa will be swept under the carpet, I say, wake up, my friend, smell the coffee. It is not going to happen. Our people want the land. So our task, and I want to repeat what I said earlier, even for those who are seeking to go around the world to mobilize the international community against their own country, I want to say to you, come back home. Come back home, let us sit around the table, let us find a solution on this issue of land. Our people have shown the best form that they have to make submissions. They have come forward, they've put submissions on the table. Let us engage with those submissions. In the end, the decision that will be taken on this issue is going to be a decision that will be owned by all of us, and it will be born out of dialogue, it will be born out of consensus seeking, and it is the type of decision that will take this country forward. This country is ready to take off. Let us use land to make South Africa move forward. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable President. The next supplementary question is to be asked by the Honourable Tobias.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Your Excellency, Mr. President, as we forge social impact, how will government address the original sin of and the developmental plan by addressing expropriation without compensation, as our people are starting to lose patience? Indeed, we need to address this original sin. We welcome also the proposal that you have put on the table. We just need to know how will government move forward with the social compact. I thank you.
The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Clearly, government in the end will implement the decisions that have been taken by the governing party on this matter of land. But it is also going to take its cue from what this House is going to decide with regard to the issue that is now in our Constitutional Review Committee. And once that process has been concluded with the inputs of all our people, government will then be able to move forward. But as it is now, government indeed is moving ahead to address the issue of restitution of land, redistribution of land, and making sure that there is security of tenure. There are a number of people in our country who do not have security of tenure, who have real serious challenges with regard to their own rights. A number of them are labor tenants who are being kicked off their the places where they are and grew up and were born. And those rights need to be secured because they've been degraded. And indeed, there are quite a number of other people who are entitled to restitution. Some are entitled to their title deeds. And all those matters, government needs to move ahead and address. And in some cases, there's been slow pace with regard to restituting land to them. We are now looking at all that and saying they must be fast-paced. We must make sure that indeed that land is handed back to them. And all this is being done, yes, within the constitutional parameters we have, because we are a country that is governed by the rule of law. And as we move forward to a social compact, which social compact I hope and trust we will be able to cement once this process reaches fruition, we will then be able as a government to move ahead to implement the decisions that will have been taken. We will make sure that we do not sit on our laurels whilst our people are hungry for land. We will want to implement whatever decision that will have been taken. So implementation is going to be the key determinant, and we must say that in the past, yes, it may well have been slow. We are now going to fast-pace this implementation process so that we address this key issue our people have wanted to see addressed over a long time. Thank you very much, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable President. The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honorable Shivambu.
No, thank you very much, House Chairperson. So the Secretary General of the EFF yesterday collected an LLB degree from the University of South Africa with 18 distinctions.
Yo.
So he says that it is common cause that the expropriation of land without compensation discourse has been championed by the economic freedom fighters. And of course, the ANC took a resolution in the 54th conference that said that there must be, as part of the mechanisms, expropriation of land without compensation. But there are beginning to be some quasi-legalistic, narrow, non-political views from members of a National Executive Committee, like charlatans like Godongwani and Jeremy Cronin, are beginning to speak in double tongue in terms of whether we're going to expropriate land without compensation and whether we're going to change the
point of order, House Chair.
Honorable Shivambu, can I just take the point of order, please? Yes, Honorable Member.
Is it parliamentary to call a member of parliament a charlatan?
No, Honorable Shivambu. Let's address the members in a respectful term and withdraw that remark, please.
We'll deal with that.
No, Honorable Shivambu, you must withdraw that remark.
Mr. Cronin, yes.
No, just withdraw the word charlatan, please.
Mr. Cronin, but the word charlatan means a person who claims to know something which does not know.
Just withdraw the remark, please.
But there's no
let's
rule
get on with
that says
let's
that.
get on with the business and withdraw the remark.
Okay, that's fine. Let me withdraw. I'll come back to
Thank
that
you.
later on.
You've got a few seconds left to ask your question, eh?
In your response, President, I'm too kahle kumireni. Ngaku ama rukona kona kali yako ifana iteka msaba nga hakelanga. I'm too kahle na ngwena ngaku na ngwema ilahla sweswi. Ateka msaba kumbe ayiteki na. So question equal, are we going to expropriate land without compensation? Are we going to change the constitution because the mandate of this house is that we should expropriate land without compensation, and we must engage in process which ultimately should amend section 25(2) of the constitution that says that all expropriation should be subject to compensation. Please come out clear this time. Thank you very much.
The Honorable President.
Thank you. Honorable Shivambu. Resolution lay. Yi leyi nga tekiwa ka 54th conference ya ANC. Na tshemba ku ri mi yi hlaye kahle. Ni tshemba ku ri loko mi heta ku yi hlaya mi zi mi vona ku ri no swantswa n'wina mi ri EFF. Mi tsutsuma swinene. Mi tsutsume swinene mi ta laha. Loko mi fika laha mi ku no resolution leyi nga tekiwa ka conference se hi lava ku yi endla ya hina manjhe.
On a point of order, Chair.
What is the point of order, Honorable Member? Order, Honorable Members. What is the point of order?
So the common cause I spoke about earlier, so the President is not...
What is the point of order?
The President is misleading the House deliberately because the founding manifesto of the EFF...
No, Honorable Member.
The election manifesto
that's
of the
a
EFF,
point for
which
debate.
happened before the ANC conference.
Honorable Shivambu.
Have got clear commitment to expropriation.
That is a point for debate. Please take your seat now.
We did not take anything from the ANC. Instead,
Honorable
the ANC
Shivambu,
is learning from us.
please take your seat now.
This
Thank you.
position.
Honorable President. The Honorable President.
Chair.
Yes.
President, first cardinal pillar of EFF.
Now, Honorable Member, please take your seat. Honorable President, will you respond, please?
Honorable House Chair, I can see that I've touched a very sensitive chord. Now, no, Honorable Shivambu, I was just merely stating the historical evolution of how this resolution came to Parliament, and basically saying, in December, the governing party at its 54th conference took a resolution on the expropriation of land without compensation. Very clear position. And I want to repeat, soon after that resolution was taken, the EFF was the first in class to come to this parliament to say, we are now going to appropriate that resolution of the African National Congress. We are now going to put it before parliament. And that's what you did. Now, I want to credit you.
Point of order.
Honourable President, will you just take your seat? Why are you rising, Honourable Member?
I rise on a point of order because the President is misleading this House and the public. In this way. In this way. He says his account.
Chair, House Chair.
It's a
No. Chair, just before that. House Chair, just before that.
Chair, stand up on a point of order. Can you please protect me?
Order, honourable members.
Can you please protect me?
Honourable member, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. Order, honourable members. Yes, make your point, honourable member.
Deliberately mislead this House and the public in this way. He says in his answer, he gives an accurate account of the evolution of the resolution and the public discourse on the land
So what is your point of order?
without compensation. Now here is the right and correct evolution.
No, honourable member, we've gone through this, really.
I'll say.
No, honourable member, I think you must take your seat.
I'm saying that the President is misleading the House.
Please take your seat, honourable member. Please take your seat. Why are you rising, honourable member?
Chairperson, the member says the President is deliberately misleading the House. Deliberately misleading the House is unacceptable and is casting aspersions on the person of the President.
Honourable member, that you say the President is deliberately misleading this House, then you must withdraw it. If you don't want to withdraw it, honourable member, then you must leave the House. Honourable Matiase. No, honourable member, I'm busy. No, take your seat. I'll come back to you. I'm busy dealing with the honourable Matiase. I'll come to you.
Nobody, Chair, he is.
No, take your seat, honourable member. Please take your seat. Honourable Matiase, are you going to withdraw the remark?
And Matias is not going anywhere.
No, honourable member.
Matias is not going anywhere. This House is proceeding very well. Now, Papa, you're messing up everything.
Take your seat, honourable member. Take your seat.
Matias is not going anywhere.
Take your seat. Honourable Matiase.
The President, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, is deliberately misleading the House and the public.
I'm
not prepared to withdraw
Honourable
his statement.
Matiase, will you please leave the House?
He's not going anywhere. You must call those.
Honourable Matiase, I've asked you to leave the House. You are refusing to withdraw the remarks, a serious allegation that you're making by saying the President is deliberately misleading the House. Honourable Matiase, will you leave the House, please? Honourable Shivambu, take your seat, please. No, I'm not. I'm dealing with the Honourable Matiase. I'm dealing with this point of order now. May I request the Sergeant at Arms to escort the Honourable Matiase out of the House, please. I'm dealing with this point of order that I made a ruling on, and afterwards I'll come back to you.
Chair.
Yes, honourable member.
There's there are technical things that you're making mistakes on here. First of all, you didn't ask the member to answer as to why he says deliberately.
Honorable member.
So that he can justify his point.
Honorable
That's one.
member. Order,
And two,
honorable members.
But two,
order.
I'm not done. Two, can you show us in the rules book where it says you can't say a person is deliberately misleading the House?
Honorable member.
Can you show us those rules?
Honorable member, please take your seat now. I've made a ruling in this regard.
House Chairperson.
And I'm still busy. Honorable Shavambu, take your seat. Honorable
I'm raising an urgent motion that you
please
must step down
take
from that
your
chair
seat.
and allow someone else to preside.
Please
there.
take your seat, honorable member.
But I'm raising a...
Honorable member, your member has raised a point of order and I'm dealing with that point of order now. Honorable member, please take your seat. I've dealt with that point of order. The Honorable Matiase has left the House. So that point of order has been dealt with. If you have any particular reason why you question my ruling that I, by the way, stand with, then you must approach the Rules Committee to deal with the matter. We want to get on with questions to the President now. No, honorable member, please take your seat. You are challenging a ruling. You are challenging a ruling, and I want you to take your seat, Honorable Shavambu. It is not going to happen. I'm sorry. I've got a ruling that I dealt with, and that ruling, that motion that you want to raise is not relevant to these proceedings now. Honorable President.
Chair, before the President...
No, take your seat, Honorable Member. I want to proceed with the President now. Please take your seat, Honorable Member. Please take your seat. We want to proceed with questions to the President now.
Chair, you have not...
Honorable Member, I've given you the rule that you must follow in dealing with this matter. Let's get on with questions to the President now. The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable.
Sorry, Mr. President, just a bit.
What is your point of order, Honorable Member?
Start taking leadership. That guy sitting there is useless.
Honorable Member, please take your seat. Honorable Member, please take your seat. Continue, Honorable President.
Thank you.
What is the point of order, Honorable Member?
Point of order, Chairperson. First, we want you to step down because you are doing the same
No, Honorable Member.
done when Zuma was the president.
No,
you are
Honorable
doing
Member.
it again. You
Please
must step
take
down.
your seat.
You can't chair the
Please
House. You must
take
step
your
down.
seat. It's not going to happen, Honorable Member. I'm afraid.
Down. We want another person to chair
Take
the
your
House.
seat.
You must step down.
Take your
we
seat,
want
Honorable
another
Member.
to
Honorable Member, please take your seat. Honorable President, will you respond to the question that has been raised, please?
Thank you, Honorable.
No, Honorable Member, I'm not taking further
House
points
Chair.
of order on this matter. No. No, Honorable Member, your party is raising exactly the same point. I've dealt with this point of order. If you are unhappy with the point of order that was raised, you must take it to the Rules Committee. Please take it to the Rules Committee. You also, no, Honorable Members, take your seat. Honorable Shavambu, take your seat. We want to proceed to questions to the President. I've made a ruling and I stand by my ruling. Continue, Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
I'm not recognizing Honorable Member. Take your seat. Please take your seat. No, Honorable Member, please take your seat and let's allow the President to proceed. I've made a ruling. I've responded to you, Honorable Member. Is it a different point you wish to raise now? Let me hear what you have to say.
Yeah. No, Chair. These proceedings have been
What
going
is your
on.
point of order, Honorable Member?
These proceedings have been going on very well, and the President
Yes.
has been doing very well.
Yes.
You are messing up a very good process.
Honorable Member, I'm applying the rules of the House. Take your
Sorry?
seat. Please take your seat now. You now saying exactly
Chairperson.
what you said previously.
No, I didn't say, I've never said this before.
No, take your seat, please.
Chairperson.
Honorable Member, take your seat. I'm not going to allow any further points of order on this matter.
Chairperson.
I want the President to proceed.
I don't think EFF is the only party
No,
that has
Honorable
got the
Members.
right.
Honorable Members, both of the EFF and I'm also requesting the ANC whip. No, take your seat, Honorable Member. Take your seat. I'm asking you to take your seat, please. Let us allow the President to proceed. No, Honorable Member, take your seat. Take your seat. Please take your seat. Continue, Honorable President.
order.
Honorable Shivambu,
Yeah, but can
why
you
are
take
you
point of
rising?
order? What rule is preventing you to put a special urgent motion against you that you must step down now?
Honorable
Which rule are you
member,
using?
we are dealing with
But
questions
you are proposing
to the
that you must
president.
step down.
Honorable member, take your seat. No, I'm not going to step down. You can be assured of that. I've made a ruling and I stand by my ruling. Order, honorable members. Order. Take your seats. Honorable President, will you continue, please? Honorable President, will you continue, please? Honorable President, will you continue, please?
Thank you, Honorable
Take your seat,
House
please.
Chair. Thank you. Honorable Shivambu.
I'm not recognizing any further points of order on this matter. We are going to proceed. We are going to proceed, honorable members. Really, really. Please take your seat. I've made a ruling on a point that you are unhappy with, and you can pursue the National Assembly Rules Committee on this matter. Honorable member, is it different from what has been said earlier? Yes, honorable member.
Okay, thank you very much. Before the president can continue, please just step down.
Honorable member, take your seat, please. Take your seat. Continue, honorable president.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I was at the point of
No, honorable members, you are making repetitive points of order about the same matter. And I am not going to entertain a further point of order on this matter. I want us to proceed. Take your seat, please. I want us to proceed. Honorable President.
Thank you,
Order.
House Chair. If I may continue, I'd like to answer Honorable Shivambu's question. I was on the verge of saying,
Honorable Shivambu.
But allow us to speak.
The president.
Members of parliament were allowed
Honorable
to speak.
Shivambu, but you're raising the same point of
But
order.
allow members to speak. You don't know what they're going to say.
No, Honorable
Allow them to
Shivambu.
speak.
Honorable Shivambu, as the chief whip of your party,
Yeah, but allow them to speak.
can
I'm
you
here to
please
defend
take
my
your
members
seat
from
now,
speaking.
please? Please take your
My
seat.
members must be allowed to speak here.
Honorable members, you are raising repetitive points of
But allow
order on the
listen
same
to them.
matter.
Listen to our members.
And I am not going to allow
Listen
it.
to our members. Listen.
I am not going to allow repetitive point of orders.
But you must listen to members.
What is your point, honorable member?
Okay, thank you.
No, Chair, no.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Chairperson, our country finds itself at a crossroads simply because of distortion of history. The same happened with Sharpeville massacre. Again, the same thing happened with 1976 uprisings. A is the question of land.
Honorable member, please
which
take your
we
seat.
are
You're making a
saying-
speech now.
No, it's not a speech, Chairperson. It's not a
What
speech.
is the point of order?
Distortion of facts.
Honorable President.
All that we are saying, Chairperson, is...
Let's allow the President to respond.
No, Chairperson, please.
Take your seat, please.
As a member of this House, Chairperson,
Please take your seat.
Will you allow the dissenting voice to be heard?
Honorable member, with all due respect, will you take your seat now, please? Thank you.
You haven't heard me, Chairperson.
Honorable member, please take your seat.
You haven't heard me,
No,
Chairperson.
honorable member, I've heard what you've said.
No,
I want the...
you haven't
No,
heard
take
me,
your seat,
Chairperson.
please. No, honorable members, the President is about to respond to a question raised by your chief whip, the Honorable Shivambu, right? The President will respond to that question now. If we do not allow the President to respond, then it will create a further difficulty for us that we do not want to go into. So can we allow the President to respond to this question, please? No, honorable member, I'm not going to recognize you. I've recognized you on 3 occasions, and you raised exactly the same point. Honorable President, I'm going to request you to continue, please.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Take your seat, please.
I thank you for giving me this opportunity once again to respond to Honorable Shibambo's question without any interruption this time.
What is your point now, Honorable Member?
Chairperson, the attitude you are using there, it tells us you must now step down. You are tired.
No, Honorable Man. No, Honorable Member. No, Honorable President, please continue. I'm no longer taking points of order on the matter. Continue. Continue, Honorable President. No, Honorable Member, take your seat. Honorable Member, take your seat, please. Take your seat. Honorable Member, take your seat. I am not recognizing you, Honorable Member. Please take your seat. Take your seat. Continue, Honorable President.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Honorable members, you are not the only members in this House. There are 380 other members waiting to listen to the President. And what you are doing now is gross disorderly conduct. And I can no longer tolerate that. I've made a ruling, and I stand by that ruling. I'm not going to change that ruling. If you are not willing to be part of these proceedings, then you are more than welcome to leave so that we can continue with the business of the House. This is really unbecoming. You can have your own issues and your disagreements with my ruling, but I stand by my ruling. Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Continue, Honorable President.
Thank you very much.
I'm not recognizing that member.
Honorable Shibambu, I had wanted to say...
No, Honorable Member, I'm not going to recognize you. Honorable Mashabela, will you please take your seat? I want to allow the President to continue. Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I'd wanted to say to Honorable Shibambu that following the passing of the resolution of the governing party, the EFF introduced the motion here, which in a number of ways has unleashed, the adoption of that motion has unleashed a wonderful process, a process of debate, dialogue, discussion throughout the length and the breadth of the country. And indeed, as the motion states, as the resolution was, that we should now look at land in a different way. We should be able to use various mechanisms to deal with the land question, and one of those is the expropriation of land without compensation, taking into account that as we do so, we should not harm the economy, we should increase agricultural production as well as food security. That is the motion or the resolution of the African National Congress, which I believe in, which was passed by the 54th Conference, to answer your question directly. What we have now unleashed is this wonderful all-empowering process, which, as I said, is already proving to include and involve quite a number of people in our country. Let us allow that process to continue so that our people get fully engaged in this discussion and debate and dialogue, and we will end up with a very wonderful product where all South Africans will have a sense that they now are part of the outcome that will have been arrived at, the one of dealing with land. And so with that, Honorable Shibambu, I say, let us continue and engage on this issue. EFF is entitled to put forward its view, as is the ANC, as is the DA, and indeed all other parties that are represented here on this issue. And let us be sure that there are quite a number of other people outside of this National Assembly who also want to put their views forward, and they should be allowed to do so. So let the discussions ensue and let people get engaged in these discussions. And let us persuade one another. Let us find one another as we seek to persuade one another. Ek sê ons moet nou aangaan, ons moet mooi praat, ons moet ook lekker praat. Ons moet ook saamwerk, sodat die einde van hierdie debat moet 'n baie mooi debat wees, waar almal van ons can say that indeed we've engaged in a debate where each one of us has contributed to the further development and building of our democracy and ensuring that South Africa becomes a successful country. Laat ons nou aangaan. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Tebekulu.
Point of order.
Yes, Honourable Member.
You know, in the rules of the National Assembly, there's a rule that specifically says that we must not cast aspersions on members of parliament. Now, the president says that we opportunistically took up the issue of land when it is in the founding manifesto of the EFF, it's in the elections manifesto, which are public. So to suggest that we opportunistically took it because an ANC resolution is casting aspersions on members of the EFF that have raised the motion, and it's decidedly and conclusively wrong and must be addressed here in this house without having to do in a way that we did of chasing our member out illegally. And you must step down still, Wayne.
No, Honourable Member, the point that you are raising is a point of debate between members of this House and the different parties that are here. And I now want to recognize the Honourable Tebekulu.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Honourable President, does this foreign investment you are talking about includes continuing to sell land to foreigners as well as the governments of other countries when there is much thirst for land ownership amongst the citizens of South Africa? Thank you.
The Honourable President.
A number of countries around the world, Honourable House Chair, have a clear rule on the issue of land being either sold or dealt with in whatever way to foreigners. They resort to the lease of land to people who want to invest in their countries, and that lease does not result in, say, ownership of land. And in a number of countries, they actually give you either 30-year lease, 60-year lease, 99-year lease, and so forth, which is renewable as you go on. And we have looked at this, and we have felt that these are things that can also be well applied in our country as well. Where there is land hunger, there's nothing wrong at all in leasing land to people from outside of your country. It happens in countries in the Northern Hemisphere, on the African continent, in Southeast Asia, and indeed in many other places that is the norm. So there is nothing that stops us from doing precisely that. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Honourable President. That concludes question number 10. We now go to question number 11 that has been asked by the Honourable Bengu to the President of the Republic. The Honourable the President.
Honourable House Chair and honourable members, the World Bank report on poverty and inequality places strong emphasis on the importance of jobs and skills in achieving faster growth that improves the lives of poor people. The report notes that it is critical to raise overall productivity and competitiveness in the South African economy to increase the number of people who can be put in employment. These findings are in line with the National Development Plan as well as the medium-term strategic framework. The report itself does concur with current policy emphasis in order to ensure that growth measures have a meaningful impact on reducing inequality. We must accelerate efforts to improve the quality of basic education and access to tertiary education. We must improve delivery of these and other key government services. This is critical given that we still need to devote resources to ensuring that South Africa's fiscal position is suitably robust to withstand shocks from either global or domestic sources. As outlined in the Budget Review 2018, some of the measures we need to take to increase investment and raise productivity include efforts that we must take to improve investor confidence, institute telecommunications reforms, lower barriers to entry, reform transport infrastructure, and support tourism and agriculture. The World Bank report confirms our view that it is not sufficient to accelerate economic growth alone. We need to ensure that such growth is accompanied by the creation of jobs so that we do not have jobless growth, but it is also the type of growth that should lead to the support of poor people in our country. It is for this reason that we began preparations with our social partners for a job summit later this year so that we can collectively start focusing on tackling the whole challenge of unemployment. Our expectation is that these efforts will help further increase the impact of recent labor market support policies, including the employment tax incentive, the national minimum wage, and indeed the youth employment service. While the World Bank report presents a sobering view on the challenges in our economy, it provides useful recommendations that are supportive of and consistent with the programs we are currently implementing. The World Bank report is a mirror that we should use to look at ourselves and to look at the effectiveness of the policies that we have embarked upon. We have good policies that we keep improving on an ongoing basis, and when the World Bank issues such a report, we pay heed because through their reports we're able to compare ourselves with what happens in other economic environments across the world. Thank you very much, House Chair.
I've been informed that the Honourable Phelps will take the follow-up question. The Honourable Phelps.
Yes, thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. Mr. President, I share the view expressed in the World Bank April 2018 report that the government's National Development Plan directly addresses the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. It further acknowledges, does this World Bank report, as you know, Mr. President, that this plan for implementation of the government's policy is moving in the right direction. The report, Economic Update, Jobs and Inequality, show that the government's improvement in education among the poor is beginning to show results, with the disadvantaged people gaining skills and their share of labour income increasing, albeit slowly. In recognising the slow economic growth experienced by the country, the World Bank suggests improvements in economic growth coupled by the interventions already expressed in the National Development Plan. And of course, we see, Mr. President, that you are addressing this as a start with your investment journey around the world and the appointment of envoys, and that the improvements in education are supported by teachers' capacity, accountability, and financial support for poor university students. So please, Mr. President, tell this House and fellow South Africans what other interventions government is driving to cut the poverty rate by more than half, from 10.5 million to 4.1, and how, listen, and how we are reducing the Gini index of inequality, 63 and 2017 to 56. And under your presidency, how we will create.
Honourable Member, your time has now expired.
So tell us finally what your position
Honourable
is
Member,
on the findings.
your time has
Thank you.
expired. The Honourable President.
Honourable House Chair, thank you very much. We are, as a government, focusing our attention on how best to improve the lives of our people, and how best we can ensure that the education outcomes in our country are a lot better than they've been in the past, and how we can address the health condition of our people in terms of dealing with various diseases, and more importantly, how we can continue to reduce poverty and inequality and unemployment in our country. The programs that we have in place are huge. They are all-encompassing, and they are the types that have in many, many ways improved the lives of our people, much as poverty has reared its head once again to a point where some 50% or so of our people are living in poverty. We need to do exactly much more than we have done in the past. Around 55% or 30 million people in our country live below the national poverty line of 992 rand per month. This is a matter of great concern to all of us. We need to make sure that we do move beyond this. In the past we have, and now with the economic conditions having worsened in the way that they have, we have indeed found that we have backtracked. But having done so, we are quite aware of the fact that the policies that we have can be made more effective, and we can address the challenges that our people are facing if we become more focused, if we implement precisely the policies that we have. The governing party is determined to root out the impediments, the challenges and the barriers that have in the past made it difficult for us to address these challenges that are faced by ordinary South Africans on an ongoing basis. And we believe that once those barriers are addressed, we should then be able to be much more effective in addressing all those challenges. We'll be able to build more houses, we'll be able to build more clinics, more hospitals, we'll be able to improve the transportation in our country so that our people are able to travel safely and comfortably to their workplaces, and that they are able to live nearer places of work. And we will be able, Ms. House Chair, to move the lives of our people much higher up than where they are. The problems are known to us. We are aware of the hardships and the challenges that our people have, and we are determined that we are going to address those hardships. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable
House
President.
Chairperson.
Yes.
House Chairperson, I find it very odd that the President had a
What
pre-prepared
is the point
response.
of order, Honourable
It's in
Member?
terms of the supplementary question rule.
No,
These are supposed to
that's
be
all,
spontaneous.
you're making an observation.
But is the President
That's
a
not the point of
clairvoyant
order.
now that he's able to
Please take
determine
your
what
seat.
questions are coming?
I want
He's
to
got a
ask
written
your leader
response.
to ask his question. Honourable Maimane.
Thank you so much, Speaker. And I'm very impressed with the President's talent to prepare an answer for a question that's spontaneous. But be that as it may, Mr. President, it's become quite clear that we're trapped in a cycle of high levels of inequality and clear poverty. Yet, And our society is still unequal. And I think the biggest level of inequality, equally so, is those who have a job and those who don't have a job. It's the South Africans who are unemployed, the 10 million that we ought to answer questions for. And my challenge here, Mr. President, is that your government has proposed a minimum wage to come into South Africa. But your treasury, your own government, has already proposed that if that proposal goes through, over 715,000 South Africans will lose their jobs. So surely, Mr. President, is it not time? I want to hear from you. What plans do you have to mitigate against those who will lose jobs? And whether is it not time to consider a job seekers grant to help South Africans who are unemployed get work?
The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Thank you. I'm glad you are very impressed with the way we, yes, clairvoyance and all that. Now, Mr. Maimane, if you have been paying attention to this whole issue of the national minimum wage, firstly, you will have noticed that the minimum wage issue started, the demand for it started in 1955, when our people gathered in Kliptown, complained about the poverty wages that they were being paid then, and said, we want a national minimum wage, because a national minimum wage will eradicate these poverty wages that the people of our country were being paid. And then the economy of our country employed far less than, if you like, 4 million people. Now, that was the complaint then. Now, with time, this demand kept on growing. It kept on being articulated by working people in our country. And when President Zuma said that we should immediately look into the issue of the minimum wage, we did so. And as we did so, Mr. Maimane, we did a research by top-class professors in our country who told us in their report that there are some 6.6 million people in South Africa who earn, on a monthly basis, less than 20 rand an hour. And they also said there are people in our country who earn, who are working people, given that we've got 16 million people who are in our country who work, working people earn even 750 rand a month, who earn 1,500 per month. Now, those are truly poverty wages. And the demand has been made throughout history for a living wage in our country. And in collaboration, and listen to this, in collaboration with the unions, with community-based organizations, and indeed with businesses, many of who support your party, the business people who are hard-nosed, focused on profit, finally said, yes, it is important that we should have a national minimum wage because we can no longer, as we signed the Ekurhuleni Accord, we can no longer have a situation in our country where people have poverty wages. That was a collective decision, the wisdom of people who applied their minds. And by the way, many of the business people who were there are people who run businesses, who know what they are doing, who are eking out a living out of running their own businesses. They said, this is precisely what this country needs to do. And remember, we are not the only country in the world that has embraced a minimum wage. Many countries, actually, if you go to the ILO, the International Labour Organization, they will tell you that more and more countries around the world are embracing a national minimum wage. They are embracing it, including developing economies. You look at Brazil, you look at a number of countries in Southeast Asia, and shut up, you stay nazen and listen. You look around the world.
Order, Chair.
I want you to shut up. I really do want you to
Honorable
shut up.
President.
Because
Honorable members.
continues to make a noise and is not listening.
Honorable members. Honorable President. Honorable President, will you just take your seat, please? Why are you rising, Honorable Steenhuisen?
House Chairperson, the Honourable President told me to shut up. I'd like him to answer, but shut up is unparliamentary. And if you're going to hurl EFF members out for telling him for deliberately leaving the House,
President,
the rule must apply to him. He must withdraw.
I am prepared to withdraw, but I'd like Honorable Steenhuisen to listen. Because we are
Honorable members, order.
You know, you are touching a very sensitive issue.
Honorable members.
Now, he continues, Honorable House Chair, to make a noise, which is...
Honorable President, there is another point of order that I want to take. Yes, Honorable Member.
Thank you.
Honorable Chairperson, I have been observing that there has been constant interjection by the Honorable Waters and the Honorable Steenhuisen. And I'm not surprised that that remark was made, because some of the interjections border on the offensive.
Thank you.
And I ask you to rule.
Honorable members, please take your seats.
House Chairperson.
No, Honorable Steenhuisen, I have not recognized you. I have not recognized you. Please take your seat.
Well, will you recognize me after you respond?
No, I am responding to the honorable. Honorable members, just calm down. Honorable Chauke. If you read the rules, you will see that when I deal with a certain point of order, you cannot raise immediately a point of order. I've heard what the honorable member has said, and may we just, because we want to conclude this session in a way that allows the president to be able to respond to these points of, to the different questions, and to, when there's points of order, to deal with it. But let's not do it in a way that can potentially derail the business of the House. I will appeal from all members in the House that we allow the President to respond. The President has withdrawn the remark, and I want to continue. Honorable members, honorable members, honorable members, just calm down. Calm down. I'm not, honorable member, I'm not in dialogue with you, honorable member. I've made a ruling. The honorable President has withdrawn. Honorable Steenhuisen, why do you want to be heard again?
Deputy Speaker, the President, if you examine the Hansard, did not withdraw. He said he would be prepared to withdraw, and then went on to a conditional rant.
No, thank
He's
you,
the one who lost his
Honorable
temper.
Steenhuisen, take
You know,
your
when
seat.
you're president, you need to remain calm.
Honorable Steenhuisen,
This is not the NEC, this is Parliament.
Honorable Steenhuisen, please take your seat. And I want the Honorable President, order. I want the Honorable President now to continue. Honorable President.
Honorable Steenhuisen. I'm being very calm, Honorable Steenhuisen. I think you should listen. We're discussing a very serious matter that has to do with the lives of poor people. And it is your continued interjection, which included, you're talking nonsense, which included other expletives, that I responded in the way that I did. Because your leader has asked a question which I'm seeking to respond to, and to the extent, and I did say shut up, and I've withdrawn that. And possibly I should have said, Mr. Steenhuisen, please keep quiet while I talk. So in future, Mr. Steenhuisen, and I'm saying it very calmly, please keep quiet. I'm talking. So, Honorable House Chair.
Order, honorable members.
What I was elucidating.
Deputy House Chairperson.
Honorable Steenhuisen, why are you rising now?
Yeah, I'd like to address you in terms of Rule 85, if I may.
Yes, honorable member.
The President said that I'd used expletives against him. This is casting a deep aspersion on me, and I would ask him to please clarify what expletives I used. Otherwise, he must withdraw or bring a substantive
No, Honourable
motion.
Member, no. Honourable Steenhuisen, take your seat now,
House
please.
Chairperson, the President accused
Please
me
take your seat.
of using expletives. I've never used an expletive
Please
against
take
the
your seat, Honourable
gentleman.
Member.
And he needs to toughen up.
Honourable
This is not the
Steenhuisen,
MTN board or the
for the
NEC.
last time,
it's
please
Parliament.
take your
It's a
seat.
robust environment, and he should learn to...
Honourable Member, take your seat. Honourable Members, I've made an appeal to both sides of the House that we allow to engage each other in a respectful manner. And please, let's do so. Order, Honourable Members. Yes, Honourable Member.
You know, Chairperson, yabona President, that's why abelungu bekhuluma nawe kanje. Nibanikeze umhlaba nifuna ukuthi siwuthathe. That's why besukuma bavele wanidelele nje. Sanuyenza, basathathe umhlaba, yiko labelungu sebedelela nje.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Please take your seat. Continue, Honourable President.
No, what I was elucidating was that...
Order, Honourable Members.
Honourable Maimani, with 6.6 million people earning way below 20 Rand an hour, we collectively, business, labor, community-based organizations and government were faced with a choice of having to say, do we leave those 6.6 million people to their own fate, where they continue to earn less than 20 Rand an hour, and say, market forces will continue to look after you? Or do we say we are going to peg a minimum wage at a much higher level, which would have wiped out quite a lot of employment? And we chose the middle course. The middle course, which we believed was a much more reasonable way of addressing the plight of 6.6 million people, but at the same time ensuring that we do not destroy jobs. Now, yes, a report came through that if you implement the 20 Rand an hour, yes, you would be able to wipe out 750,000 jobs. And we asked ourselves, what is the lesser of all the evils? Do we peg a minimum wage at 12,000, where we would wipe out maybe 8 million jobs? Do we leave those who are earning less than 20 Rand an hour to their own wiles? Or do we embark on a middle course? A middle course, yes, which would result in 750,000 people losing their job. We chose the latter. But we also said we are going to allow those companies that are going to face great difficulties in paying the 20 Rand an hour to come forward and apply for exemptions, so that we do not get people losing their jobs. And as it has turned out, a number of those companies have come forward, and when they do come forward, they have to apply and justify why they are not able to pay that minimum wage. And through that, we are going to be able to minimize the loss of those 750,000 jobs. We are going to be able to lift 6.6 million people out of income poverty or low wages. And at the same time, we're also going to take care of those workers who work in the farms and those workers who work in our houses, domestic workers. We're going to give those employers an opportunity to upgrade those wages over time. So with that, we then had a process which we believe can work for our economy, given the fact that all over the world there is a wave of minimum wage processes where countries are beginning to embrace the minimum wage movement, if you like. And we had the best world experts from the ILO, from our universities, from a number of countries, both developed economies and developing economies. And we had the best advice, if you want to know, to arrive at this minimum wage that we crafted. Now, this is a foundation. This is not a living wage, as we have said. This is a wage below which no worker in South Africa should be paid, except for domestic workers, as well as for those workers who work on our farms only for a limited period, and they will also be lifted to the level of the minimum wage. Now, the minimum wage is going to be regulated by an employment commission, which is going to be able to review this minimum wage on an ongoing basis. And for those who say it is far too low, we want you to keep in mind that if we had raised it a bit too high, many people were going to lose jobs. And for those who say the 20 Rand is too high, we have 6.6 million people that we as a country, as a nation, needs to look to improving their livelihoods. So faced with all this, we were able to craft this minimum wage, and we believe that it is going to lift 6.6 million people out of income equality, Mr. Maimane. And I'm sure you can agree to that as well. Thank you very much.
The next follow-up, Honorable Lokota, why are you rising?
I'm rising on a point of order, Chair.
Yes, Honourable Member.
I did not want to interrupt the response of the President, but just before the President did that input, this gentleman here, next to Mr. Shivambu, I forget the doctor, I forget your surname, I'm sorry. Honorable Dlamini, no, I must say this. He addressed you, and then he turned to say to the President, abelungu sebethi kanje bakhuluma kanjena ngoba nibavumela ukuthi bathathe umhlaba. Now I'm rising on this issue. That is a racist statement.
Honorable Lokota.
That's a racist statement.
Thank you.
That should not be allowed in this house. You must go and listen to the Hansard.
Thank you, Honorable Lokota.
And let me say, make my request.
Now, Honorable Shivambu, let me just
let me
deal with
make
this point
my
of
point.
order.
Let me make my point. You must listen to that statement and get your table to assist you. You must return a ruling on this thing.
No,
we
thank
cannot allow people to address each other here
Thank
in
you,
racial
Honorable
terms.
Lokota. Please
We
take your
can't do
seat.
that.
Now,
The context is very clear. It's racist.
Take your seat now, Honorable Member. Now I will listen to the recording and look at the answer.
Chair.
Honorable Shivambu.
I want to plead that we must ignore the ideological confusion of.
No, Honorable Shivambu, I've said I will look at it.
And continue with this process.
Thank you. Thank you. The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honorable Schlengwa.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. Mhlonishwa Mengameli, whilst we're dealing with pushing back the frontiers of inequality, the biggest challenge, of course, insofar as inequality is concerned, is that women bear the brutal brunt twice of inequality, particularly black women. They first are oppressed because they're women, and second, you're oppressed because they're black, in terms of the economic outlook is concerned. And of course, the gender pay gap, depending on what statistics you look at, is anything between 15% and 27%. And so whilst you're dealing with this inequality, what measures are you going to put in place to ensure that whatever growth South Africa realizes pulls women out of the challenges that they face currently, whether it's work pay, the oppression in the workplace, because it's all good and well to electioneer around slogans, fancy women abuse and so on, but it needs to form part of a broader package.
Honorable Member, your time is now expired.
Second, President, is that those at the far end of the economic spectrum receive grants through SASSA, and in the main, they're
Honorable
against
Member,
women.
your
What will be
time
done to
has
ensure
expired.
that those women are also assisted in a SASSA that actually works?
Honorable
because there have
Schlengwa,
been problems that have been going
your
on.
time is expired, and I must remind you that we should not ask multiple follow-up questions.
There was a thesis question
There's
from there which set a precedent
one
into
follow-up
motion.
question. Honorable President, can you respond, please?
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Yes, indeed, the issue of equalizing pay between men and women is an important one. And it is a challenge that we've got to address because it continues to be a burden on many women in our country, where women are paid unequal pay for equal work, and we are saying women should be paid equally as men are paid for the equal work that they perform. And this we would like to see being enforced through indeed our Labor Department, because it is discriminatory, it is unfair, it actually also violates the human rights of women in our country. So if you are doing a piece of work that is equal to a man's work, you should never be paid anything less than what a man gets paid. But unfortunately, that keeps on happening not only in our country, but all over the world. Many of us will have read about how in a number of countries, even your more developed economies, women continue to be paid much less than what men get paid. And in our own country, we need to meet this challenge and address it so that we eliminate it. We cannot talk about equality between men and women in terms of our constitutional precepts, but at the same time, when it comes to remuneration, the benefits, the treatment, the treatment is unequal. We therefore need to ensure that it is equal treatment and equal remuneration, equal benefits for work that is done on an equal basis. So that we will want to move on and ensure that it does indeed happen, and our Labor Department will be ensuring that it does happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable President. The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honourable Kubisa.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. Honourable President, it's true that a plethora of socio-economic challenges still impact negatively on our country. And of course, this includes inequality, poverty, and employment. But of course, there's these issues of fronting and labor brokerage that still bedevil the work situation and job creation. What is it that the government is doing tangible to deal with these issues? Because there are these companies, they still continue to use labor brokers and also this fronting. People find themselves in companies and they're not paid anything, and they don't know whether they are called directors, whereas they're not getting anything for being directors of companies. What is it that the government is doing tangible to deal with those issues? Thank you.
The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. The issue of labor broking has been raised on a number of occasions by our colleagues and our fellow citizens in the labor movement. It continues to be a huge problem that they encounter, and they've raised it on a number of occasions. I know for a fact that the Labor Department has sought to address this through regulations, but still our labor movement colleagues are still not feeling the effect of the regulatory processes that have been put in place. And when you look at it, you find that, yes, the labor brokers tend to earn quite a lot of money, much more than they pay the people that they put in employment. And of course, the complaint is, in the end, those workers who are brought through into employment through labor brokers do not enjoy the benefits. They do not get permanent employment, and they are tossed from pillar to post, and they are employed for certain periods and then tossed out. Now, this clearly, in my view, still needs to be addressed. We need to find a solution that is going to be satisfactory to all and sundry. We cannot continue having a situation where our labor movement colleagues continue to complain about exactly the same thing in the way that it continues to manifest itself. Now, I will be seeking to have in-depth discussions with the Minister of Labor so that we find a better way of addressing this issue of labor brokers, because it has gone on for too long, and workers feel that they are suffering at the hands of labor brokers, And indeed, we need also, of course, to hear what these companies that are involved in this sector have to say, but our primary concern must, in the end, be to address the issues that workers have been raising through their trade unions. So I will want to see it addressed more effectively. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable President. That concludes that question. The last question on the order paper has been asked by the Honourable Gallo. The Honourable President.
Honourable House Chair, honourable members, small and medium enterprises are an important part of the South African economy. They support more than 60% of employment in our country and are engines for growth and transformation. It is therefore critical that we continue to pursue measures that will open up the economy for small businesses in South Africa. The Competition Act and the competition authorities, including the Competition Commission itself, are important institutions and instruments that are aimed at addressing not only matters relating to competition, but also economic concentration and public interest. When investigating whether a merger can or cannot be justified, the Competition Commission must consider the impact on employment and on the ability of a small business, and especially firms controlled or owned by historically disadvantaged South Africans, to compete in their chosen market. The competition authorities are required to apply a case-by-case test on the appropriateness of imposing conditions on mergers. With respect to the specific decisions of the Competition Commission that were referred to by the honourable member, in 11 of the 12 approved mergers, the Commission found that the proposed transaction was unlikely to sustainably prevent or lessen competition in any market and did not raise any public interest issue. In one case, namely, the acquisition of the cast products division of Score Metals, the transaction was approved on condition that, among other things, the proposed merger would not result in any retrenchment of employees for 18 months after the implementation of the merger. South Africa has led the way globally on matters of public interest. Many authorities around the world are now beginning to recognize the importance of these responsibilities to support the public interest through their competition laws. There are a number of instances where the efforts of government and our competition authorities have led to the opening up of markets and the protection of important industries and jobs. Some 58,000 jobs were saved and 6,500 jobs were created through conditions stipulated by the competition authorities through mergers proceedings between April 2014 and 2016 financial year. In its budget vote later this week, the Economic Development Department will provide details of the latest in this financial year. As a country, we have begun to more effectively use our competition laws as well as institutions as instruments of economic development and transformations, and as indicated in the State of the Nation address, we are working to amend the Competition Act with more public interest prominent in the decisions of the competition authorities. The OECD is one of those institutions which, having looked at our competition laws, found that our competition law, in as far as public interest is concerned, is far ahead of many, many countries indeed, because we have focused our public interests area as an area that has an empowering type of aspect and tends to look more closely on how we can show up the interests of ordinary people, not only in as far as their employment is concerned, but also on areas of skills, development, and a number of other areas. So I can confidently say that on this issue, we have been ahead of the curve because the world has been learning from what we have been able to do. Much remains to be done, and this is being looked at more closely as we begin the process of amending our Competition Act, so that our Competition Act also deals with issues of concentration, also deals with issues of how we can utilize the Competition Act as fostering empowerment amongst the people who were previously prevented from entering certain businesses and certain sectors. This is an area of great development for us, and it's an area that, having addressed it in the State of the Nation address, we want to focus more attention on, because it is where we want to foster more change and development in our competition laws. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable President. The first supplementary question is to be asked by the Honourable Gallo.
Thank you, Honourable Chair of Chairs, and thank you, President, for your answer. It is common cause, Mr. President, that small and medium-sized enterprises generate employment and unlock the economic prowess of the country's outlook, as you have also alluded to that kind of effect. Adam Smith has written quite extensively on this. What steps have you undertaken to interlock the work of the Ministry of Small Businesses in promoting local enterprises with the Competition Commission's assessments of mergers and acquisitions? We are raising these questions, Honorable President, because we are worried that this neoliberalism kind of an approach is not going to benefit the people, more especially in the rural areas. We are very much concerned, Honorable President. Thank you.
The Honourable President.
As I was saying earlier, Honourable House Chair, and that we are focusing our effort on the Competition Act amendment on how best that amendment can lead to, yes, the empowerment of those who were previously disadvantaged and prevented from entering various areas of business. And indeed, we want a greater interface, not only between, Small Business Enterprise Ministry, as well as what we do in terms of competition throughout government, so that we do not work in silos. So we want to address all those challenges that you are talking about, because it is important, if we are going to foster the radical economic transformation trajectory that the governing party is committed to, that we should empower the small and medium enterprises, not only in word, but in effect, and give them the wherewithal, the capacity and the capability of being able to do precisely that. So this is an area that we are focusing on. We've shown a light on this area, and we want to utilize these instruments that we have as part of the Competition Commission to ensure that small and medium enterprises are indeed given greater opportunities, greater avenues are open for them, and great pathways are also being created for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable President. The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honourable Singh.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Mr. President, thank you for your response. There is nothing inherently wrong with mergers and businesses getting together, because they bring in more capital, more infrastructure, and sometimes cheaper prices. Your response, Mr. President, focused mainly on the job side. that we protect jobs. I want to focus my question on the supply side and the abuse of dominance. We have a number of companies that come together. Let's take Walmart for an example, a number of retail companies in the textile industry, in the accommodations, you find them coming together. But the thing is, what opportunities are being given to small and medium enterprises to be continued suppliers of products? We find textiles from India, from China, from Bangladesh, all over the world, and we find imports rather than giving small businesses an opportunity. Are you satisfied, Mr. President, that the measures that we have in place to protect small and medium business as suppliers to these big conglomerates are in place? And if not, what will be done about it? Thank you.
The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair and Honourable Singh. No, I'm not satisfied. I'd like to see more action being taken to open up greater opportunities for small and medium enterprises. And the competition arena gives us greater optionality and opportunities to be able to do precisely that. The Minister of Economic Development is, during his budget vote, going to also address specifically this issue of how through our competition amendment law we are going to be able to empower small and medium enterprises and make sure that as we do so, we look at the full value chain. That's precisely where the blockage is, where small and medium enterprises are blocked, have barriers that they cannot get over. And those are channels that then need to be opened so that they are able to act. And if we do not do so from a legislative or regulatory point of view, they will never be able to make headway, because they will always find that the opportunities that lie ahead across a particular barrier are forever lost to them. So our task as a government is not only to give lip service to the empowerment of small and medium enterprises, it's actually to empower them in real effect and open up all the opportunities, particularly where there is dominance, because in certain sectors there are players that so dominate a sector as to be able to keep out other players. And we have embraced a mixed economy trajectory in our country where competition should be the order of the day, where those who are good at doing particular things, producing goods and services, should be given that opportunity without facing barriers that are going to make it impossible for them to thrive and to succeed. Given the fact that 60% of employment is generated by small and medium enterprises, it is the more reason why we need to be focusing more attention on promoting small and medium enterprises and, in fact, promoting entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship can thrive much more effectively when entrepreneurs realize that their pathways, their channels are open rather than closed off by the type of barriers that can be created through the dominance of certain sectors of the economy by certain players. So our competition regulations and laws are going to be addressing precisely that as well. Thank you very much.
The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honourable Maimane.
Thank you so much. Mr. President, I think you always have said that we need to work together to deal with the issues of the economy. SMMEs, without doubt, are the backbone of the economy and job creators. I'm of the firm view that the future of countries is cities, because cities play a key role in breaking down regulatory burdens, etc. And where the cities that we govern, in Joburg, Tshwane, Nelson Mandela Bay, Cape Town, in coalition, we've also ensured that actually SMMEs have centers where they can come and get advice. We've shown ultimately that we've opened funding for people. So my request to you is that if that becomes true in places like Joburg and Tshwane, where jobs can be created, and we're showing them, can I ask you to help with the metros that the ANC governs, where in fact we can ensure that the same is rolled out that we have SMMEs hubs there so that people can actually get helps to start their businesses and actually create work for our people. Could I ask you to do that, Mr. President?
The Honorable President.
You just took my answer sheet. Where is the answer sheet? Honorable House Chair, Honorable Maimani, the support that needs to be given to small and medium enterprises is quite broad. It is what, in my book, is not complex. It's something that can be done very quickly, very easily. It just requires focus. And what you are saying in terms of where it has been rolled out is very good news indeed. And we have found that through the hubs that can be created, and some of those are hubs where we create situations where small and medium enterprises are able to get support. And I know for a fact that these hubs are being opened in a number of places throughout the country. And if you like, we can bring you the evidence. It's not only, I would say, in the cities that you have mentioned, it goes even beyond that. I know, for instance, in the Rustenburg area, there are such hubs. In the Durban area, there are such hubs. And indeed, in a number of other places, those hubs are being set up to assist. What you are really confirming is that through hubs like these that assist small and medium enterprises, entrepreneurs do get to move on. They get the support, they get the assistance, and we want to roll out more and more of this. The Minister of Small Business will be able, when she does a budget vote, to outline precisely these steps that are being taken through her department at national level and demonstrate effectively that it is a program that she's rolling out in a number of areas. So whilst we applaud the work that is being done in those areas that you've mentioned, Cape Town, Pretoria, and so on, it is certainly something that is being done elsewhere, but it needs to be broadened. I've taken the view that if we were able, Mr. Maimani, to create up to, say, if you like, 1,000 such hubs in our country and spend, say, 1.5 billion rand, we would be able to create up to 1 million jobs. And with that, we would then be able to create a number of entrepreneurs who are supported. They, in turn, would employ others. And we have seen how this, in practical terms, is able to assist a number of people, indeed, to create their own businesses. Now, I'm happy to come with you, but I'd like you to come with me as well to those other areas where this has taken root, where success has actually been achieved. So you and I can go around the country and look at all this. And actually, I say that in earnest. I say, yes, you can come with Mr. Steenhuisen. I say that in earnest because, yeah, I say it in earnest because I would like to see members of the opposition and, yes, the governing party being able to act together, work together in certain areas where our people need to see that indeed through the parliamentary process and what have you, we're able to work together. So it is for that reason that I'm going to invite you, Mr. Maimani, as Minister Zulu leads us to some of her hubs so that we can go and see together. So come accompany me when I go with Minister Zulu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable President. The last supplementary question is to be asked by the Honourable Tembekwayo.
One of the most devastating deterrents to the growth of small businesses in this country is the free flow of goods and services from foreign countries that stifles any opportunity for growth of our own industries. A typical example is the death of our own poultry industry as a consequence of foreign countries, including the US, dumping their cheap chickens here, and EU. A large number of finished goods and products that enter South Africa are not adequately taxed. Are you, Mr. President, planning to increase tariffs on imports of goods and services that we can locally produce in order to encourage growth of our own small businesses? Thank you.
The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. The tariffs are an instrument that you use from time to time to achieve certain gains and to defend some of your sectors and some of your markets. So we cannot ever have a situation where we say we are going to use tariffs on a blanket basis. We need to use them wisely. We need to use them on a targeted basis. But the issue that you are raising, what is behind that, is our own ability to be innovative, to be efficient in as far as producing goods that the South African consumer wants to buy and wants to have here. Now, there are quite a number of instances where we have indeed allowed those from outside of our country to gain market share. And in some of those cases, it has been through our own inefficiencies, it has been through our own lack of innovation, and where we can innovate, where we can improve our efficiencies, you'd find that we are able to gain more and more market share around those. And in the end, there are moments when, yes, you do need to utilize tariffs. Obviously, when we do utilize tariffs, we have to utilize them within the broader scheme of the World Club that we are a part of, which is the World Trading Organization, which watches our utilization of instruments such as tariffs on an ongoing basis. But the important thing, of course, is that we as South Africans need to be encouraging more and more of our own producers to produce goods efficiently, to produce them innovatively, and to utilize technology to be able to outperform our competitors. And I'll give you a very good example. On Workers' Day, I was wearing a cap that was made in China. I was sitting next to the president of COSATU, and I said, let me see the cap that you are wearing. He took off his cap, showed me. He noticed that it was also made in China. And I said, President of COSATU, this is precisely what we need to be addressing. As South Africans, as the labor movement, yes, and as the government. And we agreed that this is an issue and a challenge that we need to address as South Africa, so that we begin to promote the Made in South Africa process, that we must make things here. There are areas where we can do that. And that we will be able to do by focusing our own, for instance, our own incentives on incentivizing some of our own businesses to produce locally. One is not really arguing about a blanket import substitution type of process, but I'm arguing for us to be able to produce certain goods so that we are able to protect jobs. Minister Patel was one of those who led us in protecting a number of textile jobs. And we were able to do so by being innovative, by getting companies that operate in that field to be more efficient. And by doing so, we were then able to keep outside competitors out. Now, it requires quite a lot of effort, and I know that he's focusing on that. We need government as a whole to begin focusing on how we can promote the Made in South Africa campaign and get more and more of the things that we wear including the red jacket that you are wearing, that we must make sure that it is also made in South Africa. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable President. That concludes questions to the President. I wish to thank the Honorable President. Honorable members, that concludes the business for the day and the House is adjourned.